Okay, thank you everyone for joining us today. Welcome to How to Advocate for Accessibility in Your Workplace, presented by the Department of Disabilities Statewide IT Accessibility Initiative. I am joined today by Nikki Jackson from the National Federation of the Blind. Unusual housekeeping items for our webinars. We have captioning available today. You can turn that on by pressing the closed captions button on your menu ribbon. This is being recorded and will be posted to our YouTube channel within a few days, and we will send out the slide deck along with that recording once it's available. Please note the slide deck is mostly covering my section of today's webinar. Nikki will be discussing her area without the need of visual aids. So just so you know, but you will have the recording and the transcript from this, so you should have everything you need. We will be breaking for two parts for questions. We will be having, after Nikki speaks, we'll have a section there for her questions for her. And then after my section, we'll have a wrap up and some questions there. So go ahead and use Q&A for that or chat. I will try and moderate as best as I can. And with that, I do want to just go over our agenda for today quickly. First off, we will be talking about the reasons for incorporating accessibility into workplace processes, then how to advocate as a person with a disability, as a supervisor or a colleague, or both. And then finally, we'll discuss the resources in Maryland that are available to help. With that, I'm going to let Nikki take it away. Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you, Stephen. Hi, everyone. So excited to be here with you all this afternoon to talk all things accessibility and advocacy. So, as Stephen mentioned, I work as the employment program coordinator for the National Federation of the Blind, our headquarters down in Baltimore, Maryland. And I'm coming to you all with the lived experience of a blind person who has been in the workforce and providing some helpful tools that could be useful for you as you're advocating for more accessibility in your workplace. I will preface by saying that what I say is not the golden rule, okay? So it is based off of my lived experience and my own research. The one thing, though, is that that is really, I think, unique about being in the disability blind community is that we all will approach this very differently. So I think it's very important that as you are in your workplace and you have the opportunity to engage with people who are disabled, even if it's outside of blindness and low vision, that we would all advocate for accessibility in different ways. But the ultimate goal is to create an environment that is inclusive and provides an opportunity for everyone to thrive in the workplace. So with that said, so what is accessibility? Some may say it is having the ramp available for people who use mobility aids, or maybe having Braille buttons in the elevator or on the elevator, or having the office signs in the workplace have Braille on the side so someone can identify them. And while that is accessibility, I believe it's a lot deeper than that. I believe it's more than just focusing on the physical space. Accessibility is about ensuring that everyone in the workplace, despite their ability, has the opportunity to engage in full participation, can contribute their ideas, and feel included. Currently, just to kind of go on and give an example, I know a brilliant woman who has worked in the field of providing services to the disabled community for many, many years. And she recently transitioned careers working with a different group of people, working with children. And she's working specifically with children who deal with multiple disabilities. Well, in this new role, she now has to use a platform that asks her to enter the data around tracking like behaviors with the children, maybe incidents that may happen. This is a way that they can organize all of this data and compile them into monthly reports. Well, although this person is very skilled and knowledge in this area, the platform that the job is using is inaccessible. It is not compatible with the screen reader. And so, with that, it makes it truly challenging for her to be able to do her job, not because she doesn't have the skills and the knowledge and the experience, but because this particular portion of the job is inaccessible due to the platform not being screen reader compatible. And so when we talk about accessibility, it's not necessarily a technical issue all the time. It's more related to a human issue, right? It's the fact that a lot of times accessibility is put on the back burner. It's kind of treated as the afterthought, and we should really be focusing on making accessibility the standard. So accessibility is inclusion in action. It is truly the bridge that gaps what it means to have good intentions and what it means to really help people fully participate. Accessibility benefits everyone. So, for instance, let's say someone who is deaf and hard of hearing, they use captions. That could actually benefit others, right? Maybe someone who is learning the language could use captions to help assist with that. Maybe someone who prefers maybe not to have kind of the auditory stimulation, but would prefer to read the captions on a movie or a video or some type of even today, right? Someone could be using the captions as opposed to hearing my lovely voice. But that gives, and having that particular um, option, right? Making it accessible gives people the choice to choose what tool works best for them, and it really makes it more inclusive, and it can benefit everyone in that regard. Another example of how accessibility can truly be beneficial for everyone. So let's say that a flyer is sent out throughout your company, and maybe it is promoting an upcoming conference or some type of professional development event. And let's say that is done in a digital format versus print or just only print. If it's just print, people who are not print readers, maybe they have print disabilities, maybe they're blind or low vision, or maybe they just don't work in the physical office, right? Like we are in a culture now where a lot of people are working remote. So having a digital option like this opens it up for everyone, right? And it does it in a way that doesn't necessarily single people out, but it gives them an opportunity to engage with the information in an accessible way that works best for them. So those are just two examples of how making or putting accessibility at the forefront can really be beneficial for everyone. So I want you all to just take a moment, a quick moment, and just think about a situation or a time when something wasn't accessible for you. Whether that be maybe you encountered a document and the font was like really tiny and you're trying to read it and you're squinting and you're like, oh my gosh, like this is not readable. Or maybe you came to a building and pulled the door to open the door and the door is like super heavy, right? Like, and it didn't prevent you from getting in the building, but it maybe created some challenges. So thinking back to that moment when you were met with something that wasn't accessible, imagine having to deal with something like that all of the time, and especially when you are trying to complete tasks in the workplace. That can be pretty challenging. Something that may take or should take you about 5 minutes, but because of something being inaccessible, now it's taking over an hour or so because you're not only having to problem solve and kind of work around these barriers, but you're still having to also complete the task. So now that you've taken a moment to think about a time where something wasn't accessible for you, I want you to, this is something that you all don't necessarily have to, well, I don't want to assume, right? Because I don't know who is all on the call. But if you are a person who is non-disabled, these are accessibility challenges aren't something that you face every day. So for my folks who don't necessarily have those barriers to face, you may be asking, well, how can I help? How can I serve as an ally? How can I help advocate for these things in the workplace? And so I want to touch on a few ways that you all are able to do that. All right. So, first and foremost is um, centering the voices of those who are in the disability community, I think is most important. And that can be done a few ways. One, if there is someone in your workplace that you know has a visible disability. Maybe that you've had the opportunity to chat with them. You've built, somewhat of a professional rapport with them. Giving them the opportunity to share about some of those challenges they face and what could be helpful for them is really important. I think what happens a lot of time when non-disabled people do want to advocate for people with disabilities is that sometimes our voices are not centered or not heard. And what happens is we get the things that people assume we need versus the things that are actually going to be helpful for us. So I think that is the very first step is making sure that we're lifting and amplifying the voices of the folks in this community and asking them what is helpful for you, what's going to provide you the tools and opportunity to be successful, but then also make it so that you feel like you're included in a part of the team and that you're contributing in a way um, that you feel is just as efficient and as valuable as your peers. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I would say is if you don't know anyone in your workplace that is disabled, because there are things such as invisible disabilities. I think it's really important to talk about accessibility in meetings, and we'll talk a little bit about that, but kind of making it more general and asking your team members, asking those who are in your department, how can we make this environment more accessible so that everyone feels as if they are included in our processes and our projects, that they're being considered when we're exploring new platforms and software that we can use. So that's another way. It's a bit more general because, again, sometimes someone might not have a visible disability, so it's a bit more difficult to really identify who those individuals are. But this is a way to get those conversations started, and it doesn't necessarily have to put people in a position where they feel singled out as well, right? They can just share their opinion and not have to share some of those more personal things or personal things about their identity. Um, so the second thing after centering those voices of the disabled community is awareness. Let's say that you don't work with anyone that you know of that has a disability. Just being more aware of where your department or your team may be lacking in regards to accessibility is really important. And so um, kind of an example of that is you go to a meeting and it's an in-person meeting and whoever is running the meeting brings nothing but handouts that are in print. There's no other there's no other format. There's no digital format. There's no braille, no large print, right? It's just your normal size print or your regular size print. That's one way to kind of identify a moment where accessibility is not at the forefront, because here is the materials only being presented in one format where having multiple formats could be very beneficial for the group as a whole. So when we, sorry, 1 second. Okay, so when we notice that accessibility is missing, right? Like the example again, going to that meeting and noticing that there's only print handouts that are materials that are being handed to everyone, all the attendees. it's modeling the inclusive behavior, right? Like not necessarily calling the person out in the meeting, right? We don't want to do that. Like, oh my gosh, this is the only version or the only format that you have, right? But maybe during the next meeting, maybe you're running that meeting. So maybe you can kind of start that conversation where before your meeting, you send out an email to everyone to say, hey, I will be providing or I'll have a visual presentation at my meeting, but I wanted to provide everyone the slides or the text or the topics beforehand. Asking people what is the format that you prefer, or just providing different alternative formats before that meeting and sending that out to everyone. And that way, everyone has an opportunity to access those before the meeting. That's a great way of modeling what accessibility could look like without necessarily doing it in a way that could call someone out and make them. I don't want to say make them feel bad, but bring it to their attention. I think in a very diplomatic way. Um, so another way that this can be done, I have another example. So let's say you're in a meeting and you are going through your slides. Like let's say you didn't have an opportunity to prepare any alternative uh, formats for your slides or materials. Let's say you're going through your slides, and typically people will have the text on their slides and they'll actually verbalize the text during the meeting. But let's say you get to a part of the presentation where the slides are very visual. This is a great moment to really lean into creating a more accessible environment when you describe what's being communicated on the slide. So for instance, if one of the slides say, oh, well, during this period, we had like there's a chart. There's a chart presented, and you may point out, like, okay, during this period, we had 15% profit of growth, right? And instead of saying, okay, well, according to the chart, you all can see, and then leaving it at that, instead, you actually give that visual description to everyone in the room. That does a few things. One, if you do have anyone who is blind or low vision, or maybe even has some print disabilities, it gives them some of that visual information that they're not able to get. But then, two, I think about technology sometimes can really just be a pain and it doesn't want to behave. And so, let's say you have a few colleagues who could not hop on the Zoom or Google Meets or whatever platform that you use. And let's say they just had to call in by phone. Giving them that visual description from the slide is also really helpful because they're not present, they're not attending on one of the platforms, so they can't get that visual information either. So just doing small things like that can be really, really impactful. Another way that we can kind of bring the awareness to accessibility in the workplace is when you learn that maybe your organization or your team or your office is about to embark on using a new platform, working with them to make sure that it's accessible, or does it work with the magnification application for someone who's low vision? Is it screen reader compatible with someone who's blind? And you don't have to be an expert in this, right? Like if you're not a screen reader user and this is not your jam, don't feel like, oh, well, I can't really, talk about these things because I don't have a lot of knowledge. It might really just be as simple as going to your IT department and say, hey, like I heard we'll be using that new platform really soon. Do you know if it meets accessibility standards, right? So just kind of flagging those things so that you're starting to do something like shift the culture in your workplace around putting accessibility at the forefront. Um, okay, so small practical steps that you can take, and I've kind of mentioned these already, but I'm going to just go back through them really quickly. So sharing materials and handouts during meetings, making sure that they're all in alternative formats for individuals, such as digital, print, large print. Again, you can also, if it's a small meeting and you can reach out directly to the folks who are going to be there. it's always nice to just ask them, like, what format do you prefer? And just let those individuals tell you what they need and then create that format from there. Let's see. In digital spaces, adding alt text to images. So any materials that you send out that may have images, making sure that there's alt text provided so that folks who are blind or low vision um, can um, can get this information just like everyone else. I'll also say another practical step that you can take is using let's see, meaningful link text. So a lot of times we'll send links to each other and it will say click here or see link below. But a really helpful way to do that is just renaming your link. And if it's a report someone has to download, you can change the name to download report or something of that nature. And that definitely helps to be more direct. And, you know, if it creates a way for folks to be able to access those links at ease versus click here or see link below, things of that nature. If you encounter any reports or documents or platforms that are inaccessible, like, you know, if you're not a screen reader user or a magnification user or anything like that, you maybe won't notice these things. But let's say you do work with someone who does, and they've maybe expressed you know, uh, they've expressed some thoughts around the use of it, and maybe it's giving them some challenges, right? Definitely take that opportunity to report this information and say, hey, you know, this is causing some issues. Like, can we have IT look at this, or is there another way or another thing that we can explore to ensure that this is accessible for all of our colleagues? Okay, so I talked about shifting the culture a few minutes ago because ultimately that's what this is about, right? Like it's not a thing where it changes overnight, but it is one of those things where once we start having the conversation and we start making accessibility a part of the conversation and all that we do, it does start to shift that culture. And again, accessibility no longer then becomes the afterthought, it becomes the standard. So I think it's important to remember that accessibility is not the responsibility of human resources or IT. It's actually the responsibility of all of us. So for your team, your department, your office, we are all responsible for making sure that we can all work in an inclusive space. And I think when we all take a piece of that responsibility, it doesn't then kind of put all of that stress on one department to make it happen. Like we can all play a role in shifting that culture just by making that a part of our own teams and our own departments. Um, Another way we can shift the culture is when we're starting new projects, when we're looking at implementing new platforms, new programs, talking about accessibility at the beginning of those planning stages, right? It is a lot harder to try and worry about accessibility at the end, right? Like when the project is when you're kind of in the middle of planning and executing, or when the new program has already been implemented or software, it's really hard then to focus on accessibility. But if we start having those conversations at the beginning stages, it makes it a lot easier. Another way that we can help shift that culture is to celebrate and highlight the months that really focus on disability workers. October being one of them. So yes, happy National Disability Employment Awareness Month. And this is a great month because we really get to celebrate our blind colleague, or not blind, excuse me, our disabled colleagues who are out here contributing to the workforce in really meaningful ways. So that's a great time to really help shift that culture of accessibility in the workplace, get those conversations started, and really you get to learn about the why we celebrate this month and hopefully connect with new colleagues in that way as well. Other ways that we can shift that culture is taking accessibility trainings. So whether it be through web accessibility, whether it be through learning to create an accessible PDF, right? Finding some type of training that you and your colleagues can participate in to really help develop those skill sets because they can be very useful too. And again, it helps to shift that culture to start thinking about accessibility at the beginning. The final thing I have here for just helping to shift that culture is um, asking for feedback. So this kind of goes back to the beginning where I spoke about really centering the voices of those who are part of the disability community. Um, when there are projects that you've executed, or maybe maybe there is sorry. The link went off in my ear. Or the
Sorry.
chat. No, it's okay. Yes, learn about National Disability Employment Awareness Month. Thank you, Stephen. So it's really cool to like come back on after things are complete and really connect with folks and asking for their feedback, right? So after a project has been executed, after a program is complete, maybe once a new software or platform has been installed and folks have been using it for a while, come back and ask about how are things going? What is your experience? And what can we do to make the environment more accessible? Right? Like that's really important because I really think that's where you're going to get the information that you need to try and make or to work to make your workplace more accessible. So really lean into having those conversations and asking for that feedback. And honestly, more times than not, people are happy to share that. Like they want, to be able to contribute to the workplace in a meaningful way. And when you give folks the opportunity to do that through accessibility, oh my gosh, like you listen, people will amaze you in the way they invest in the work when they feel like they're valued. So I highly encourage having those conversations with people and asking for that feedback and, you know, asking for them to provide opinions on how the workplace can be made more accessible from their point of view. So, why does this all matter? You know, it's really about ensuring that all people in the workplace feel included. Again, I mentioned that, folks who feel like the workplace is inclusive really make the effort to show up as their best selves and put their best foot forward. Not to mention, when it is an inclusive workplace, people's gifts and talents really are able to shine because they're not having to focus all of their energy on just kind of overcoming these obstacles and these barriers. They can really focus in on the work. A lot, and I'll speak from personal experience, anytime that I face an accessibility issue in the workplace, all of my attention is really on getting through those barriers at that point. And then the work almost comes second because you're just trying to get the task done. Whereas if things are accessible, if I don't have those barriers to face, I can truly focus on the task at hand. And so that's the same for everyone. Um, let's see. So again, true accessibility is not the afterthought, it's the standard. And so we just want to make sure, I just want to leave you all with that, right? Like we want to really start to shift our way of thinking too, that it is the standard. And I even have to tell myself that as well. I'm blind and I work for a blindness organization. And so sometimes I'll think, oh my gosh, blindness is the only disability that I have to worry about when I'm creating documents for our programs or thinking about how we're going to execute our programs and not realizing that, oh wait, but there are other disabilities as well. And so making sure that I'm thinking about that in my daily task when I'm working with individuals is really important. And so I can't stress that enough, that if we all do that, we can really help to shift the culture of the workplace. And so I am going to leave you with a question to think about before I close here. After everything I shared with you today, I want you to think about one small way that you can make your workplace accessible today. So when you log off the webinar, what could you do in your workplace to get those conversations started or make something accessible for everyone in your workplace? All right, that's all that I have. Stephen, is it okay if I open the floor for questions if folks have any?
By all means.
All right. So, any questions?
I would just like to say I hope you all enjoyed the real-time example of, accessible meetings and me posting that link so that Nikki's screen reader goes off right in the middle of her part of the
Oh my gosh,
presentation.
it was great. It was perfect. Perfect timing.
So that's things to be aware of, people, is that, Zoom does allow personal settings for what sends a notification to the screen reader, but you don't know what they've set their personal settings to. So try to time things better than I did.
No, it was great. And so just to add to that, I typically will try to turn JAWS off during a meeting because I know if it goes off in my ear, I'm gonna get distracted.
That's
Oh,
fair.
thank you. I see just like that, but then I get to read nice comments. So why would I turn JAWS off? But I couldn't turn JAWS off in this regard because I had notes to actually like go through too. So, but
Yeah.
it works out
Hey, it's always good to have practical examples.
for sure. No questions.
Currently not seeing anything, but if I see something pop up while I go through my part, we can try and answer it during. I do want to second everything Nikki has been saying for those of you in the state and for outside the state, honestly. And that's why my part is going to focus on what resources are out there in Maryland to help you. So I'm going to share my screen quick. Now, I am somewhat responsible for reminding everyone about the Americans with Disabilities Act because that is the primary law regarding all of this, and I would be remiss if I didn't cover it. So, as a reminder, the ADA Title I, or the ADA, is a civil rights law passed in 1990 that prohibits discrimination against individuals with disabilities in all areas of public life. So that includes public, private sectors, nonprofits, open spaces, transportation, jobs, schools, everything and anything falling in those categories and beyond. Title One is the one that is focused on employment opportunities. So internal, inside a company, the accessibility we're talking about inside your office. If you need an accommodation, uh, if in hiring opportunities and in those areas, making sure that they enjoy the same employment opportunities and benefits available. And then Title Two is the one that is about state and local government. That is the other part of our focus. And I need to just hammer the point yet again that the Title II rulemaking that passed in April of 2024 that now holds the state and local governments to websites and mobile applications are now held to the WCAG Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.1 standards, level A and double A. And we need to be compliant with those by April 24th next year, so 2026. That is for entities of over 50,000 people in their population. Maryland state agencies, we are technically responsible for every resident of Maryland, and so therefore we fall under that deadline. For any of you who are parts of organizations or companies or local governments that have responsibilities to less than that number, so under 50,000, you have until April 2027. There are 5 exceptions under this Title II rulemaking. We have covered them in a previous webinar on the ADA Title II updates. You can check that out on YouTube for more detail, or you can just reach out to me. I'm happy to try and explain them to you. And there's also a lot of resources out there in general about this because everyone is talking about it. So now into who can help you in the state. So internally, for those of you in the state, uh, I obviously need to point out DBM's Equitable Employment Office, EEO office. They are also responsible for coordinating the state's ADA coordinators. So every department and office should have an ADA coordinator nominated, and all of their information comes from this office. So they're kind of your front runner for handling um, reasonable accommodations, requesting accommodations, learning about that process, learning about how AT can be implemented in the workplace, and they provide the training for the ADA coordinators and work with other agencies to make the resources and assessments needed available. So uh, basically involving Title I, or in terms of those of you with disabilities trying to get the resources you need, this should be your starting point. That process, simplified, is starting with asking for a reasonable accommodation, either verbally or in writing, to your supervisor or manager. They should work with the agency representative, who is the ADA coordinator, in order to fill out the reasonable accommodation request form. And depending on the disability and the need, there may be need for medical documentation. And then that will start the interactive process to determine exactly what the employee needs and identify a reasonable accommodation. Usually that involves an assessment unless the employee knows exactly what they need and want, in which case the ADA coordinator and the supervisor and the agency are responsible for attempting to get that as near as they can. For more information on that, though, please visit DBM's website for the reasonable accommodations policy and procedure forms, because they are probably your best place to go. All right, I see something in chat, so I'm going to just quickly pivot to that. I was wondering if there is a place where there is an overview of tools that can be used for various conditions. Sometimes I think that supervisors as well as HR may not always been aware of items that can assist their conditions. And also those who are newly diagnosed with conditions might also have issues with knowing what to ask for specifically or what tools are available. That is a great question. Um, there isn't really a good answer to that, because there's just such a wide breadth of conditions and needs and overlap of different areas. Because, as Nikki mentioned, she uses JAWS, but someone else might prefer NVDA or might use Zoom text that has the reading function enabled, because that's just either their preference or that works better for their condition. They might have a similar condition, but you know, um, ultimately, that's kind of what the assessment process is for, is try and determine, is, there's a lot of, or these people who do the assessments are usually trained clinicians who uh, can either help determine what might work best for that situation, or for learning about where to go, what research can help with identifying that too. I'll touch a little bit on this when we get to MD-TAP, but it is something um, that's kind of honestly difficult to just have like a big repository of that. And yes, as is pointed out, the ADA coordinator can provide you with the answer. The coordinator is suited to assist with determining what equipment is needed for each person. So yeah. If for whatever reason you're outside the state agencies, your own organization should have uh, something similar. Usually that's HR. For local governments, there's probably an ADA coordinator as well. If it's a university or a school system, they should have someone, or someone in um, the special education program. I can't talk today. Who can help? And Nikki, I'm just, yeah. Just for clarity, everyone, Nikki and I used to work together, so she knows me really well. So that's why she's always having uh, to keep herself muted while I, do this. And yes, EEO officer can assist. Uh, for anyone, a resident of Maryland, if you're just interested in learning about assistive technology in general, there will be the MD Assistive Technology Program, which I'll talk about shortly. So hold on tight. Last thing about the accommodations process, though, is what happens next is within 3 to 6 weeks, hopefully less time, employee and manager receive a grant or deny in writing for their reasonable accommodation. Typically, it's a grant. Um, Obviously, we try to do our best to fulfill the needed accommodations. Um, if for whatever reason it's not available, though, or it is determined unreasonable, the employer will still have to choose another effective accommodation. So something will be done. It's just in some cases, either what is exactly wanted isn't available right immediately, and we need to figure out a stopgap, or it's just not available within the budget at that time. They still need to provide something, and then down the road, refill that accommodation request with the actual request. So it is an ongoing process, and ultimately, something will be done. Now, going further into that, the Assisted Technology Program, MDTAP, which is where my office or my team is housed. This is a great resource for everyone in the state because what it is essentially a lending library of assistive technology. So we provide access, they provide equipment demonstrations, loans. There is a reuse program. There is a loan program for helping with financing and training on this. We work pretty closely with the ADA coordinators. So hopefully your ADA coordinator is aware of us. So if for whatever reason uh, the employee is unsure of what they need or want, you have a way to try things out before you make a purchase. Can also help. We have a clinician here who runs it, two of them, and they can help also try and determine or help the ADA coordinator make a determination. It is the coordinator's responsibility or whoever they hire as the assessor, but we're always here to help. But we have a free library available to any Maryland resident with a disability. If you are outside of the state of Maryland, do not worry, your state has one as well. So if you need, please reach out and we'd be happy to direct you to your state's assistive technology program. But this includes people with disabilities, family members, friends, what have you. We're happy to show off what we have here. Um, there's AT for daily living, blind and low vision, cognition and memory challenges, computers, tablets with a variety of either alternative communication devices or apps for blindness, low vision, deaf, hard of hearing, any of those things, environmental controls, phones, recreation, speech. We try to cover roughly every major category of disability to some regard. And if we don't have something that works there, we will try and direct you to what can. And there is no cost to borrow these. You can essentially rent out something for a period of up to a month. Sometimes it's a little bit less if it's in high demand, and try it out, see if it works for you, and then we can help direct you to where you can acquire it and maybe some resources to help pay for it in some events. Now, for my team, the statewide IT accessibility initiative. So, uh, this is for mostly in-state, again, agencies, but for anyone outside a state agency. So, those of you in local government, local universities, nonprofits, for-profits, other states, what have you. I can't offer all of this, but I'd be happy to help advocate for accessibility for you guys. Nikki mentioned that it's everyone's responsibility, and we try to embrace that as great as well as we can. So by all means, reach out. I will try and do something to help, even if it's just a short presentation to your leadership on why they should adopt accessible best practices. But our mission is primarily to assist Maryland state agencies with improving their digital accessibility footprint through education, evaluations, and procurement assistance. So we offer e-learning modules that are available in the Workday system for state employees. We also can schedule one-on-one or group training. So If your office needs to learn about what is accessibility or learn about how you can implement it into your workplace processes so that everyone's, taking a role in it and learning what they can contribute, we can definitely do that. That is one of our major goals. And then we also have live webinars such as this one, and then process consultations. And there's a lot more that we offer outside of this. This was just the most relevant to what we do or what we're talking about today. So, and again, for those of you who are not in a state agency, I'm still happy to meet with you to consult on what we're doing and how maybe you can adopt some of those practices or where you can start in your workplace to try and implement greater accessibility and making sure that everyone kind of learns what at least they can contribute and what they can do and make everyone's life a little bit easier and better. There's also the Do It Office of Accessibility, and they are located in the Department of IT, headed up by Andrew Drummond, who used to work here at the Department of Disabilities, so he's got a lot of experience in this area. Um, and they are the ones who set the Maryland State Accessibility Policy and provide governance for state agencies on accessibility requirements and implementation. And then finally, they also offer guidance on workplace policies and heads up the officers initiative. So every agency in the state should have nominated an accessibility officer who is part of a larger group that the Do It Office of Accessibility talks to, and they're kind of the point of contact for making sure that accessibility is considered at all stages in either procurement or development or projects or what have you. And so they're the main way that Do It shares this information on how to make things accessible from the get-go, what we're calling born accessible. They also can do much of the same services that we offer. So consultations on workplace processes, training one-on-one or on a group, anything like that. For either our team or their team, you can request service through a Do It service desk ticket. So you can just put an IT accessibility request in the subject line. For those of you outside of the state, if you just want a consultation or just want to chat with them, learn about what we're doing at the state and how you can adopt those processes, you can email Andrew. His email should be on there, but should be andrew.drummond2@maryland.gov. Or you can email me at stephen.polacek@maryland.gov. You can also use the mdod.nva email that was part of the invitation to this. So ultimately, we are here to help as in whatever capacity we can. But the goal is again to make sure that everyone is learning about how they can contribute to it, how we can normalize accessibility, and make sure that everyone is making their workplaces a better place for all involved. With that, we are now at pretty much at the end. So if we have any questions, if anyone's thought of something for Nikki, you can post that in either chat or Q&A. If you have something for me, I can also do what I can to answer. I'm just going to open those now. You're welcome. See, I had a couple thank yous. Yeah. Thank you all for attending and
You're
learning about this.
welcome.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Once the recording is posted, can we share it publicly? By all means, it will be a YouTube channel link. So it'll be a publicly available video. So please feel free to share it with whoever you'd like. Thank you all for attending and thank you all for listening. We're happy to try and help with whatever we can. Okay, will you be having training on the WCAG rule in the future? Um, we can cover that again. Right now, we don't have a plan to cover it, but since you mentioned it here, we can try and put it on our schedule maybe for January or so to kind of go give any updates we've heard about the ADA and the Title II rulemaking. Um, if you're inside the state, though, in a state agency, which I believe you are, who the one who posted the question, please reach out. We can try and set up something one-on-one to discuss it, or team, or what have you. So, looking to use it to bring accessibility conversations to religious organizations. Wonderful. That's great.
Mhm.
Um, for those, I believe you guys will fall under, well, I mean, I'm going to say Title III, but ultimately, you know, I would rather people not have to rely on the law to implement this. But I do hope that that conversation goes well for you, and that might, yeah, that'll be some interesting challenges there, I think, because you know you're it's an area that doesn't involve technology just as much. I mean, it does, but I feel like there's something unique there that I haven't considered before.
Mhm.
I'll have to think about that. But yeah, I hope that goes well for you. And if you're looking for any kind of resources, please do reach out. I mean, I I'm always going to do what I can. And, I can't provide like in-depth consultations or testing for you, but I'm happy to try and direct you to resources I'm aware of, or at least give you like a preliminary like you know walkthrough talk of what I can. Um, And the NFB, National Federation of the Blind, I do need to give them a shout out because they do a lot of work in this sphere as well, in a variety of areas. Nikki, works in employment, but we typically partner and work with the Center for Excellence in Non-Visual Access, Jonathan and Kennedy, and they are more technology focused. And they often co-presented our webinars. We presented their webinars, and they're a great resource for digital accessibility. And then obviously the NFB covers a large uh, other area in legal and university education areas as well.
They do a lot.
Yeah. I should also mention before I forget, while I primarily work in digital accessibility, the Department of Disabilities does have policy directors in a lot of other areas. So if you have questions about, deaf and hard of hearing or transportation or any of those things, please do reach out. I'd be happy to put you in touch with the person who is working in that relevant area. State employee with a visual impairment trying to bridge gaps where I can to make life easier for myself and others. Great. I mean, that's wonderful. And if you need help with that, or if you need someone to kind of help, give a little push as to why you need to do that, please reach out. Either myself, Andrew, Matt, and Dan, any of us are happy to try and help however we can. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and end the recording.
Mhm.